Hello, people of the interwebs. Welcome to Movie Breakdown. I'm Zack Cantrell.
I'm Jacob. You don't need to know my name.
Okay, well, today we're going to be talking about a classic movie, JT.
Classic, I agree.
Underappreciated by a lot of people. This movie is Troy, about the ancient Greek myth of the Trojan War. It was made in 2004. It was directed by Wolfgang Peterson. And it stars Brad Pitt and Eric Bana.
Most notably, Brad Pitt.
So, run us through some impressions that you had of this movie. Like, how do you feel about it?
So, when I was younger, I loved this movie. This is still kind of in my top maybe 20 movies. Watching it again now, I'd say it's not as great, but I still love it a lot. And middle-aged Brad Pitt can do no wrong.
You know, yeah, I've always felt that this movie was, like, nobody really talked about this movie.
No.
It's an epic movie, big budget, made a lot of money. It has lukewarm reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, but I always felt that it had some great action sequences. The music, the score is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I never really quite understood why the film was never as appreciated as I appreciated it.
It's bizarre, honestly. That's the only way I thought of it.
So, what do you think? What are some of the things you like about the movie?
Okay, firstly, you mentioned it already, but the choreography for the action. You know, some of the big broad combat that might be procedurally generated or whatever, those are awesome because it's not just two armies all running into each other, hacking and slashing, but there's like legit walls clashing into each other, and that's a real thing that happens. And then also the individual fights. Okay, spoilers. You should already know that. Don't be an idiot. Eric Bana as Hector and Achilles, Brad Pitt fighting. That's one of the best fight scenes, pretty much, that I've seen in film in all time.
Yeah, I actually did a project when I was at community college for a film class where we had to pick a certain aspect of the filmmaking process or an element of a movie. And my group got fight scenes. And so I was supposed to talk about the choreography. And I actually picked the fight between Achilles and Hector for that showing in the class, and I kind of broke down that fight. I chose it more purely for the actual choreography, because we were able to do like symbolism, like how the fights were symbolic and how they looked on screen in terms of emotion, and then we could do like skill wise and I used Troy as the example of skill, and it was just, you can see that these two guys are expert masterclass fighters. Yeah. Obviously, can't top Achilles.
Correct.
But
it's the man.
Hector, he does a nice job. I liked that they make Hector look both competent and out of his element at the same time.
That's kind of the whole Achilles being enraged about his cousin being killed. He's taunting him. Like, pretty much the entire time, Hector looks competent. But Achilles is playing with him.
So true.
Yes.
He, get up, Prince of Troy. I won't let a stone steal my glory.
Yeah.
Achilles knows he's going to win. Hector knows Achilles is going to win.
Hector knows he is saying goodbye to everybody. Yeah. He's like, oh my god, I have messed up by killing his cousin.
It's like if you were to play chess with the Grim Reaper, you're not going to win. So, another positive... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I really enjoy... is that scene where Patroclus is imitating Achilles, right? Because he's trying to rally Achilles into fighting. But when he fights Eric Bana, you can tell that Eric Bana is very skilled, and Patroclus kind of isn't. So you're like, this is a little bit wrong, and it's weird what's happening.
Right.
And then Patroclus gets got. Like, just a simple spin to the throat, and you're like, oh my god, that was abrupt. And then that pairs so well with Achilles toying with him the whole time.
And you're sitting there, because if you're not familiar with the Greek myths, you're sitting there like, oh my god, did they just kill
literally
the main character?
What just happened?
And I was actually watching this in a class the other day at SF State, and one of the kids, after we stopped showing the movie, he raised his hand, and he's like, wait, so, because we were watching it in clips, we didn't watch it,
so we
just watched that one clip, and the guy's like, wait, so did he just kill Achilles? And she's like, no, that was his cousin dressed up as Achilles. So that obviously has a big impact on how the rest of the film goes.
Yeah.
Because had that not happened, Achilles and his Myrmidon, they were just going to leave.
Achilles would have left.
They were going to leave.
He would have taken his girl and gone.
Okay, so on to more positives. I think the score is actually pretty underrated.
Yeah.
I know a lot of big box office epics have great scores, like Titanic comes to mind, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars.
Lord of the Rings is the one to think about, yeah.
But Troy, it's pretty good. It has that nice balance between complimentary and makes you feel what it wants you to feel.
Yeah.
One of those, it's not as heavy as Lord of the Rings. Like, it doesn't seize control of your emotions.
Yeah.
But it's not as complimentary as something like The Force Awakens or The Last
Yeah,
Jedi.
the kind of like Avengers kind of music where, besides the main theme, it'll just kind of underlie and set the tone a little bit. This is more like in between demanding emotion from you and just kind of lolling around. I think the better examples are, I think I mentioned this already, but when the Trojan army was outside their gates and the Greek army was first showing up and coming over the hills, there was a very high-pitched ring going into the thing, and that's like classical Hitchcock, like, oh my god, that's supposed to scare me. So you're just kind of, it's not fully freaking you out, but you're like, this isn't good. You're rooting for Troy in that instance because you're scared with them.
And you've got the constant trumpets, the doo-doo-doo.
Yeah.
Like, it's it just feels like war, and it feels like it's terrifying. It doesn't. This movie both tries to glorify war and also not glorify it. It tries to show you the horrors of war and why some people don't enjoy
Exactly.
it. Like, Hector doesn't enjoy war. It's just kind of a duty to him.
Yeah.
Achilles relishes in war. That's how he's going to be remembered. That's what he's best at. And I think the movie does a phenomenal job contrasting those two philosophies. That's really the main theme of the movie. It's, do you want to live for today, for the people that you are related to, the people that you love, or do you want to live for your legacy? Are you going to be remembered in 1,000 years? And Achilles, I think they do a nice job with Achilles, again, his arc, because he starts off clearly wanting to be remembered. That's all he cares about. All he wants,
immortality.
He wants to be immortal. He wants to be remembered, and he has been. But as the movie goes on, he realizes that's kind of fruitless, and Hector has been telling him that all along. Hector is the Prince of Troy, and he just wants to protect his country, his countrymen, his family, and that directly contrasts with Achilles, and I think they do a very nice job showing that.
Yeah, I think the kind of arcs that you kind of see there, or Hector is just like everybody making sure, like, hey, maybe the omens of the gods aren't the right thing, but practicality, or how we go about this so that everybody can live and not, like, do the honorable thing and listen when the gods tell you to. You're just like, hey, this is what's going to happen. We don't need to be remembered or anything. And then Achilles is, fallen in love with Perseus, the slave cousin of, not captured slave, cousin of Hector, but, like, he's fallen in love and coming to realize, maybe I don't need immortality. Maybe it's okay just to be with this woman. And then the only reason, like, he doesn't leave is precisely because of Patroclus. Because he goes and gets himself killed, and he's then enraged and has to defend his family. But I love that part where he's like, okay, I think I'm okay with not being immortal.
You mentioned the whole gods, wanting to please the gods. I think this movie does an interesting thing with the gods, because the ancient Greeks were all about the gods.
Very much so.
Festivals for the gods, offerings for the gods.
The first glass of water you pour out a little bit.
For the gods.
Yeah.
But Troy, it's kind of grounded in reality. It's less like the Odyssey, and it's more like the Iliad. There's not a lot of mythology in the Iliad composed.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Compared to the Odyssey. But I think it's more interesting when you look at Hector and Achilles. They both acknowledge, the gods are real. I've seen the gods. Hector always wants to do right by the gods, and yet they're both they kind of live their lives separate from that. Hector criticizes the priest when he's like, oh, I saw a crow carrying a snake, and it means an omen of this, and Hector's like, how many soldiers does Apollo give us? And like, he believes, but he understands that the gods have their limitations. And Achilles straight up doesn't fear the gods. He cuts the head off of the Apollo statue.
He's seen them. He knows they're nothing.
He's like, I am a god, like, pretty much. He doesn't care. And so I think it's interesting how two men who believe in God, the gods, don't really care to suffer their wrath.
I think that's a that's a good way to do the kind of the Greek myths and the Iliads, because Achilles is totally invulnerable, right? Like in myths, the only part of him that's injurable is the heel, but he's like invincible in this movie in the way that he doesn't get hit. Like he's just good enough that nobody hits him, and we don't know for sure if he's got the bronze skin and nobody can hurt him, but he's like, the one time he gets hurt is that first arrow through his heel, and then he's vulnerable.
I think it's interesting that I think the movie shows that, I think it makes a nice little wink at the Achilles heel thing, but I don't think that the movie says, yeah, that's what kills him. Because he gets shot 4 times in the chest.
4 more times. He gets over Boromired. It's rough.
Yeah, he gets over Boromired. A Boromir, for those of you who don't know, is when you get shot with arrows 3 times.
Yes.
And then die.
And
but
the third one's the one that really kills you.
Yeah. But Achilles, he makes it to 4.
Our men are too close to the walls. Pull back, you fool.
Sean Bean's in this movie. He plays Odysseus.
Yes.
The movie doesn't really focus on him too much, but I think he's good in a complimentary role.
He does a great job of like providing the voice of reason in the whole thing, kind of like the wise man around, even though he's still pretty young. Yeah. That is the Odysseus character, and he does come up with the Trojan horse. Yeah, he's responsible for many deaths.
Yeah, there's a lot of blood on his hands. One of the things that I think they did a nice job showing his wit and his in the know is when Achilles is with the merman and they're watching the battle when the Greeks try to take Troy. Yeah. The day after they land, Achilles is saying like, "Pull back, you fools! You're coming too close to the walls. You're in range of their archers." And it cuts to Odysseus, and
that's what he's saying. He's like, "Pull back. We need to form a line."
He's saying the same thing. He's like, "Get the troops in a line." Achilles is like, "Get the troops in a line." So it shows that while Odysseus may not be as renowned at fighting as Achilles is, but he's definitely knows what he's doing.
He's got his head on his shoulders. He knows the art of war,
and that's why he's able to survive the Odyssey, which we'll talk more about later. The next thing we want to talk about is, what are some things that you think could have been better? Things that could have improved.
For some points, some of the relationships with the female characters could have been done a little bit better. It's not a super feminist movie in that, like, say Briseis and Helen both kind of get shut down out of what they want to do individually. Helen's like, "I'm gonna leave," and everybody's like, "No, just listen to what Paris says. He's gonna fix this."
Paris knows what he's doing. Paris proceeds.
He does not.
No. I question whether Paris has ever picked up a sword after that fight with Menelaus.
Yeah. He's got a bow that they kind of ram in a little later in the movie, which it's, you know, they tell you about it before he kills Achilles, so it's okay, but I'd like to have known about that sooner.
Yeah, it's definitely not a movie that goes out of its way to make the female characters look good. They're pretty much reduced to just standing on the walls watching their men die and fight. And
yes.
So if you're looking for a feminist movie, this isn't the one.
That may not have been the times.
I guess that's how it was back then. But there definitely were some cool Greek ladies. The Amazons, Wonder Woman does a great job showing them. Less so Justice League. But that's one of the things I definitely dislike about the movie. I don't like this one part of the movie where Achilles just meets Briseis. He's just been given Briseis. Okay, yeah. And then immediately after that, Agamemnon takes her away from him, and then Achilles is furious.
Within 3 minutes of meeting her, yeah.
As if he'd known her for years. He's furious. And I think that's a little rushed and forced. They could have at least had a few more talks before that.
The only thing that kind of goes to that is that they barely tell you this, but Achilles is kind of like a dude with a good moral code. So he tells Briseis, "You're not really supposed to be my slave." He unbinds her hands and tells her, "You have nothing to fear from me, and you're the only Trojan who ever will say that."
Right.
And then he's like, "I killed many men in combat. I've never killed a priest." He doesn't kill... I don't remember if he said women or children or not, but he's got his moral code, and he doesn't give a damn about King Agamemnon. So he's like, "I'll protect this girl even at your cost."
Yeah.
But I agree that within 2 minutes and willing to kill for a woman doesn't really scream good relationship.
Kill definition. Your own countrymen too. Yeah. And that's really what leads to him sitting out the next few battles is Perseus being taken by Agamemnon.
Somewhat spiteful, but that's humanity.
Yeah.
So I like it.
Let's see. Another thing that I don't like about the movie is I think Brad Pitt I don't think it's one of his better movies. I think there's some lines where it seems like he's phoning it in.
There's a couple moments where he has to give the rousing speeches, and beyond like
it's
immortality,
it's
take
yours,
it, it's yours. It's not super amazing, but he does a great job in the choreography, and he does everything else very well. He's smolderingly hot, so he gets away with some stuff that other actors would not.
Yeah, I mean, he's Brad Pitt.
Yeah, you don't really have to say a lot.
On the other hand,
Yes.
I think Eric Bana does a phenomenal job. I think he does the best acting job in the film.
I would agree.
He really portrays that family man, dutiful son, Prince of Troy. He plays it perfectly. I don't think you could have cast anybody better to play Hector.
No, it's awesome. It's actually really cool because a lot of Eric Bana's other roles have been pretty either unassuming characters or not very interesting.
Right.
I'm thinking back to like the Hulk movie.
Yeah.
Good Lord. But that's just a great character, and that's pretty much the only thing I'll ever think of whenever I think of Eric Bana is, hey, he's Hector.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
Whenever I see Eric Bana, I'm like, Hector,
Yeah.
what's up, man?
How you doing?
Yeah.
This is another bad performance. Peter O'Toole plays Eric Bana's father.
Priam.
Yeah. So he does really well when he's speaking, but a lot of the movie he's not talking and he's just kind of looking over the wall. So like, there's a good example where Paris is getting got and he's like crawling over to Hector's legs, and Priam's just walking down the stairs like he's not really doing anything with his face. I didn't really enjoy that performance. I was like, that's just some dude trying to portray some level of horror that is not coming across.
There are some hollow performances. I don't particularly like Helen's performance at all. She speaks maybe 5 times.
She's not given enough to really work with. Yeah.
Agamemnon is kind of over the top, but
in a good way.
I like it.
It's
funny.
fun.
It's like
everybody knows that one GIF when Menelaus is fighting. He's like,
he's good fun. I do like Menelaus as well. He's a little over the top too. You can kind of relate to him. I mean, his wife runs off with a foreigner, and then
you can and you can't relate to him because he's kind of a huge
he's
asshole. I mean,
he's a
literally in front of his wife, he's groping a bunch of dancers and stuff.
And then Agamemnon's like, "Don't worry, brother. We'll get her back. I want her back so I can kill her with my own hands." It's like, he's a bad dude, but I mean, yeah, like you can relate to him, but he kind of takes it too far. So those are just some of the performances we thought were good and bad.
Yeah.
Moving on. They could have made a sequel if they had wanted to.
For Odysseus, right?
Odysseus, they could have made the Odyssey. Probably could have split it up in a couple movies, made a lot of money.
A couple movies, or maybe a mini-series of like the, was that Brothers in Arms show or something?
Band of Brothers.
Yeah, Band of Brothers, that's it. I think that kind of vein would have done the Odyssey really well, because there's a lot. So much to parse through the Odyssey, and there's also the kind of journey through each of them where he's like contemplative and stuff.
Yeah,
and
it's the classic hero's journey.
Yeah. It takes its time with itself, so I don't think a full movie would have been nice, but seeing Sean Bean playing that kind of wisecracking-ish, smart character, I would have just really loved that.
Yeah, he could have done it well. I think one of the issues would be that when you look at what Troy was and what the Odyssey would have to be, Troy was a very grounded in reality.
And then you kind of jump to like the fantastic, like a good modern example of it is kind of the early Avengers movies where they're all kind of like, they're pretty grounded in reality, and there's some guys that have superpowers, and then you jump into Guardians of the Galaxy where it's like
space.
It's way more over the top and a lot more fun and more interesting. This would just be going from Troy where it's grounded in reality and war and humanity to like, oh my god, that is a giant mythical beast in the sea and one in the cave up there, where do I go?
And it would have been difficult to pull off because they don't even mention those things in the movie. They don't show them. There's no indication that there are mythical beasts. It just seems like it treated a myth in a historical sense. Like this is what the myth would have been had it been in real life. It doesn't really. Another movie that does that is Dwayne The Rock Johnson's Hercules movie. I don't know if you've seen it.
I think I've seen it.
Yeah, it's not. I didn't like it that much, but what it does is it kind of paints Hercules as a fraud. Like he claims to be this immortal, like strong guy, but he's really an above average strong man. But he's not like a demigod.
Lucky with the arrows.
He's not a demigod. He's really good at fighting, but he's nothing short of human. He's still human, and it's kind of like that. It shows a myth in the reality of the world, and that's kind of what Troy is.
And that'd be a little difficult to do the Odyssey with.
You could do the Odyssey. Like I don't think you could.
Like even some of the more tamer stuff, like the sirens, like even just the sirens singing. Like how do you ground reality in that? Just hearing these beautiful mermaid ladies sing is gonna make you kill yourself.
Yeah, and
it's bizarre.
You got the whole thing with Cyclops as sea monsters, Calypso.
Yeah. So like that's probably one reason why they haven't done it, and another reason is that the reception for this movie has just been pretty lukewarm. It made money, especially overseas. But
it's a bit late now. It's what, 14 years later.
I mean, it was a 10-year journey.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like Sean, if they wanted to, they could go out and make it. They don't want to.
No, that's pretty clear. That
being said, I would love to see the Odyssey made into a proper film someday. I think it's a great, rich story. It's, like I said, the classic hero's journey. It's like almost the OG hero's journey. Yeah. It would be a fun ride. I would be okay with a miniseries, a television show. I would be okay with like a few movies.
I'd probably even be okay with it being done only pretty well. Like, it doesn't even need to be amazing. I just want to see it. It doesn't need to be Game of Thrones. I'm fine with even, like, a Spartacus.
But for the love of God, Zack Snyder cannot direct it.
No, just keep that man away from it, please. I think we bring that up mostly because we're comparing 300 to that with the fight scenes and where the Myrmidons were locking up on the beach. Like, that's what we're kind of comparing to. And we did mention the Amazonians being a little different from Wonder Woman to Justice League, but you can take that how you will.
Yeah, so all in all, I don't think this sequel is going to happen, at least not one that's directly related to Troy. I think it'll get done someday. I think it's just too rich of a story not to explore. I know they've done it in the past, not particularly well. I remember seeing an Odyssey movie that don't remember who was in it. I don't remember when it came out, but it wasn't very good.
Those kind of things are just cheap. They're the Thor 2 of myths, I guess. It's just mediocre and you don't remember anything.
You can't do it cheap. You've got to have a good budget because there's a lot of fantastical stuff that happens, and I just really hope we see it someday.
Yeah.
What would you give this movie on a scale from 1 to 10?
1 to 10? Tell you what, I'm going to break this down into 2 different parts. 1 to 10 in terms of a moviegoer, just a kind of an average guy. This movie for me is an 8. I love this movie. I really enjoy it. As a film guy, starting to kind of figure out what I enjoy in films and what I think needs to be fixed in films, I'd probably give it a 7.
I think that's fair. It's one of those movies where you can sit down and enjoy the action. It's kind of like a not on the level of Transformers because that bores me to death.
That's straight up like an ode to action.
Yeah, but it's one of those movies where if you want to see some good fight scenes, you'll enjoy it. If you want to see a perfectly executed emotional tale of drama and heroism and tragedy, it's got some elements of that. It's not going to completely satisfy you. So
Go read Shakespeare. That's what you want.
I'm probably going to give it an 8. But there's a lot of nostalgia because I watched this movie a lot when I was a kid.
And we do know the character's background. If maybe we could ignore that, it might go down a point or 2.
True, because you're kind of expected to know the Trojan War myth. So yeah, I say 8, 7, 8, somewhere in that ballpark. Mm-hmm. Seems like you're saying the same thing.
On a scale of Game of Thrones characters in the show, it's doing pretty good. It's got 3.
3 Game of Thrones characters.
We just watched Kingdom of Heaven recently. That had 4, so it's not as good as Kingdom of Heaven in that regard.
Yes, that is relevant to how good a movie is.
Of course.
So that was our first show. That's all we have to say about Troy.
Yeah.
It's been fun being here with you tonight,
It
Jacob.
has. Thank you. And that's just it.
That's just it. You're
Yeah.
not going to reveal
Thank
your
you,
last
Zach
name.
Cantrell.
Zach Cantrell. I'm
No
Zach
one's going to
Cantrell.
know my last name.
So let us know how you liked the show. If anybody watches this, there's a good possibility that no one will watch this.
Yeah, if you like parts of it, but you don't like other parts of it, tell us why. If you think we need a deeper timbre in our voice, tell us. Screw it.
If we need to grow giant full beards, give us a few years. So that's all from me. I'm Zack Cantrell.
I'm Jacob. Go ahead and tell us what you like. Tell us a new movie if you like. If you want us to see something specific.
Or we'll just pick something and do it next time.
Yep.
Peace.
Later.